Hello everyone, this is Visor, and I'm just going over my Exodia Summoned Lord-Lock deck profile for the new non-partial adjusted ban list that isn't a list, but not a ban list, for March 2016, and just wanting to sort of discuss the deck, my experiences with it, and a couple of adjustments you can make if you so want. A couple of talking points with the setup of the deck. It's not entirely where I'd want it to be, but I'd appreciate any advice on the matter, and I've just tweaked the side deck ever so slightly, so we'll quickly get into this. It's 5 pieces of Exodia. It is not your only win condition, but it is by far the most fun. So they are there. Running one card D. I found I don't ever need to run more than one card D. If you open card D, that's great because it allows you to siphon through your deck more quickly to get the relevant lock pieces together. But later in the game, turns 4, 5, 6, if you draw into card D, chances are you've already set up most of your lock combo on the field. So, obviously you'd activate it still, but it's not really adding anything to the current game state apart from cycling through your deck a little bit more quickly. So it's there for consistency. I think if you ran more than one, you do end up trading off a little bit of that consistency. 3 Summoned Lord Exodia. This card is too sweet. It is a brilliant card to throw up, particularly in combination with Kaiser Colosseum, because the only way your opponent is ever going to get round Summoned Lord is by destroying it via battle. And you've got so many outs to stopping or preventing or stunning your opponent doing anything in their battle phase with Scrub Grade and Obliterate that you do limit their chances of having a successful attack against this card. Also, if your opponent knows you've got 2, 3, 4 pieces of Exodia in hand, then why on earth would they want to destroy this and let you get off draws to get through your deck and perhaps draw into one of the remaining pieces of Exodia? So it is a real dilemma for a lot of decks. You have to get over it at some point, but there is a cost to getting over it as well. So brilliant card, synergy with Metal Reflect, love it, love it, love it. Chicken Game, fantastic card. I'll happily pay 1,000 life points to draw. Great thing with Chicken Game is if your opponent thinks that paying 1,000 life points to draw is good as well, then technically you're going +1 next turn because you get your draw phase and you get Chicken Game's effect off, assuming they haven't destroyed it by card effects after they used it. So that again is just enabling you to create a more steady, sturdy lock, get necessary bits together so you can throw up a Summon Lord or whatever it is that you might want to do. So brilliant card. 3 Kaiser Colosseum. Honestly, I do believe this is the MVP for the deck. This deck does not operate anywhere near as successfully without Kaiser Colosseum. Kaiser just prevents so many decks from swarming the field. And in today's meta, that's what the meta loves to do. It loves to swamp the field, throw up Synchros, Xyzs, Pendulums. The list goes on. They like to throw up those Nordens and just carry on and recycle and recycle and recycle. So Kaiser stops that. It puts a halt to it. It says no. So it's so important to look after Kaiser Colosseum where possible, which is why we run the Dark Bribes that we do. It will slow down your opponent. And you'll notice that your opponent will often target Kaiser Colosseum if they've got an MST or a Twin Twister, because they themselves know how important this card is. They won't go for Skill Drain, or they won't go for Obliterate, or they won't go for Metal Reflect if there's a Kaiser on board. So that just shows the power this card has, because it really fucks with a lot of people's decks. 1 Day of Peace, of course. 3 Duality. Still stand by this card. This card's fantastic. The only dilemma you ever have to make is if you can throw up Summon Lord and it's beneficial, i.e. you've got enough Exodia pieces in the grave, or you want to go for a Trolley Gustav Max finish, or you just want to set up a Kaiser lock, then of course you'll do that. Otherwise, of course, you're always activating Potted Duality, and you can bring a Summon Lord to hand or an Exodia piece to hand, but more importantly, you're going to be bringing one of your trap cards to hand, so you can just set up that lock that we've talked about. 3 Upstarts have some life points. 3 Dark Bribe says no. don't take my word for it. Watch Gagex Scapegoat's video on the subject. Dark Bribe is fantastic. Name me a card that does what Dark Bribe does, that isn't a monster. You know, you don't have to go summon a shit ton of monsters just to get Cyber Infinity out, or whatever the case may be. Dark Bribe protects you so much, and I'll quickly touch on it. Where it is really great is it keeps you on par or ahead of the game state. For instance, I ran into a deck the other day that was Speedroids, and I had Custom, Raid, Reflect, Fake Trap, and something else, or Bribe. I top decked Kaiser. He threw up a Clearwing Synchro turn 1, and I set up my lock, and he went to blow up Kaiser, and I Dark Bribed it. And because of that, he really couldn't do anything else. Didn't draw into another MST or a Twin Twister. So he's really stuck for options. Like, Metal Reflex protected by Custom, Rage protecting Battle Phase if something happens. But he can't throw up any monsters to get any new effects off. So Dark Bribe allowed me to win that game by keeping my lock secure, by keeping me in control of the game. I challenge anyone to sort of talk it down. The people that do talk it down are meta players, like uber meta players that will only play Pepe or Necros or whichever deck is in vogue at that particular time, because they don't see the point of it, because the decks they play have so many ways of throwing out a gajillion monsters in a turn that Dark Bribe, of course, is an irrelevance to them. But anyone that likes to play anything anti-meta, roguish, trollish, something that isn't conventional, this card is brilliant, and I will always stand by it. One Fake Trap. This is one of the cards that you can take out. Again, I'd love to hear what card you would run in its stead. Where I do like it is it does protect all your trap cards, and because the trap cards are so intrinsic to your lock, it is a great card to have. It's a great card to have if, for the sake of argument, they throw out that Black Rose, and you may have Imperial, but say you don't have Imperial on the field, it just protects your entire setup. The problem with it is late in the game, when you have a lock set up, there's not really much the opponent can do, providing they haven't already swapped the field, in which case then Kaiser's irrelevant, and you're going to play the deck in a more aggressive fashion by using Summoned Lord and bouncing their monsters back to hand with Obliterate before re-establishing your Kaiser lock. So it does protect against the big plays, but if you open Fake Trap, it does come across as a little bit of a wasted card, that it's not adding anything to... You're not able to draw through it, and you're not able to lock out your opponent with it. So if there's something better, I'd love to hear it. I just don't want to run multiple trap monsters, because again, for the same reason, that can get too cloggy. If you opened like 3 Metal Reflects, a Scrub Raid, and an Exodia piece, I mean, that's a bricky hand. So anyway, it's there. It's one of the discussion pieces we'll quickly come back to. 3 Imperial Custom, protect all my trap cards, yes please. 3 Metal Reflect Slime, get over it if you can. Synergy with Summoned Lord, open up some rank 10 Xyz plays. Just a really solid card to have. And even if you don't have Custom, if they don't pop it, 3000 defense is going to be tough for a lot of decks to get over. 3 Obliterate, this card is bananas. This gives the deck a stun variation that really gives it more of a competitive edge than a normal lockdown deck. Being able to bounce your opponent's monsters back to hand is a fantastic effect. It's just about using it carefully. You can use it once per turn in either player's turn, which just seems so overpowered. But you've always got to be careful, particularly if you don't have a Kaiser Colosseum on board. There's no point, obviously, bouncing back an opponent's monster to hand that can resummon itself. Also, there's no point doing it if they're looking to extend their plays further. If they're looking to eventually go into a synchro play, you want to bounce back the synchro monster. That just makes sense. So do be careful when you use it. You don't want to shoot your Obliterate too early, but has great synergy with Imperial Custom, great synergy with Scrub Raid as well, because Scrub Raid can send us to the grave and you can pull an Exodia piece back to hand. It is just a... Oh, gosh, sorry. Just a fantastic card. 3 Scrub Raid, most underused toolbox card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Talked about this card lots. It's too good not to play. 1 skill drain, because this does come in handy. Particularly if you do not have a Kaiser. This is like your 4th Kaiser in essence. In some ways it's more powerful. In others it can hurt you because it obviously will negate Summon Lord's effect if you don't already have Summon Lord on the field. But it is a very, very powerful card still. Would love to see it go to 2. I mean, I don't think Konami will ever put it back to 3, but I think 1 seems a bit harsh, but particularly with the way the game is, where lots of cards can just say no to your effects anyway. But hey-ho, it's at 1, we got to run it. And Statue of Anguish. I've discussed why I like this card over Abyss Stingray as a one-of, because if you have this card already on the field, you draw into Reflect, you summon Reflect, you can pop a card on the field. And I like the fact you can just stun your opponent that little bit extra by destroying their back row, because this deck isn't aggressive in that sense. It will allow your opponent to build up a back row, because they can't bottomless any of these, and they can't bottomless Warning, Torrential, Judgment, whatever solemn enter adjective that you'd like to put in. They can't do anything to this card either. So let them build up the back row, and sometimes just popping that 1, particularly if it's a pendulum or if it's maybe whatever it might be, it's always worth doing. So that's the deck. The 2 cards though that I would contemplate messing around with are these 2. I'm still not completely convinced on Anguish Pattern in terms not in terms of its effect, but in terms of running a 4th trap monster, because you can set the Exodia pieces. If they go to the grave, that's not the end of your game. Because of Scrub Raid, Obliterate, and Summon Lord. But I just sometimes find in some games it works well because I don't necessarily draw into the others, and you've got the 4th card there. In other games it just ends up being a wasted card in the hand that I will just ditch to end my battle phase with Scrub Raid. So there are alternatives you can run to Statue of Anguish, and certainly Fake Trap as well. I have contemplated running Solemn Strike in the deck, but to pay 1,500, yes, it's not a lot, but if I manage to get off multiple chicken game effects, then Solemn Strike can be a bit of a problem, because it becomes a dead card in the deck. I mean, it's an insanely powerful card, but you can't just throw away life points early in the game too readily. You've got to think about it a little bit more carefully than that. But I certainly would understand if you threw a Strike in there in place of Fake Trap, or even in place of Statue of Anguish, because it is an insanely good card. And as a one-off, I can understand why you might want to run it. But again, for the same reason as Fake Trap, Strike doesn't really add anything to the game state. Yeah, it's great early on, but then maybe I'd prefer, if I had a hand and I had Solemn Strike in it, maybe I might prefer a Kaiser Colosseum instead of it. It's what I'm trying to say is it's a great card to have, but it doesn't help the lockdown apart from stunning your opponent. Now, that can be beneficial, but it also can be a hindrance, because I'd rather that card be something else that contributed to a lock. And at least you could argue that Statue of Anguish contributes to a lock if you've got Kaiser and Custom on board. So those 2 are cards you could play around with. If you wanted to play around with a deck at all in that condition, then those 2 are the cards you could drop in. In terms of the side, there's 1 card, don't know why it's there, especially given that I'd never run more than 1, so I'll take that out soon. 1 Gold Sark, 3 Prohibition, 3 Stingray, 3 Anti-Spell Fragrance, 3 Solemn Strike, and 1 Vanities. Again, Vanities is quite a nifty little card you could throw in place of Fake Trap just to slow down your opponent, or in place of Statue of Anguish. Yes, it hurts your own plays in terms of getting Metal Reflect out, or in terms of getting Summon Lord out, but if you have a Scrub Raid, then that's not really a problem. You can always just ditch this card. The problem is if you don't open Scrub Raid and you have Vanities and you feel compelled to throw it out there, you can set yourself back if you've got no way of getting rid of it, particularly if you've played like an Imperial Custom to protect something else. It becomes a little bit tricky. What you can do with this deck is you can revert to a more classic lockdown. You can take the 3 Summoned Lord pieces out, and you can run 3 Prohibition, and you could take out, you could take out the Obliterates and run Solemn Strike, and in which case I'd or you can take out the 3 Obliterates, run 2 Solemn Strike, take out Anguish and Fake Trap, and run 3 Abyss Stingray. So there are ways you can go about it. I certainly always start like this, but sometimes in certain matches you can go into a very defensive-minded deck. You can turn it into just a bona fide lock deck and really just bore your opponent in submission. The problem with that is it's just nowhere near as dynamic as what this deck is. This deck has stun, it has stall, but it also has an aggression factor with Summon Lord that previous Exodia decks have never really been able to throw up, apart from, Exodia Quasar, but that deck is so conditional at the best of times. 3 anti-spell fragrance are in there, just in case, again, you want to decide a couple in because you've run into pendulums and, there's a few pendulum monsters whose effects will pop your back row. So anti-spell fragrance is quite a nice option. But again, the problem with it is that if you don't open with it, you're already behind because your opponent's going to have so many pendulum monsters in their deck that they'll just be able to throw up a combo and recycle the monsters and cycle through the monsters and draw more cards. That if you don't open anti-spell, you've basically bricked. So there's some thoughts there, but certainly if anyone knows what they would do with a Statue of Anguish and Fake Trap, I'm quite content with how it is. I just perhaps would like it to be a little better. I could throw Gold Sark in as opposed to Fake Trap, but again, Gold Sark's very slow, and at least Fake Trap is A, protecting my back row to a certain degree, but B, I can use it as cannon fodder for Scrub Raid if I need to ditch any materials. And obviously if you play Gold Sark, you have to wait 2 turns, and you no longer have the card on the field to be able to ditch with Scrub Raid. And if anyone can tell me why Gold Sark's still at 1, I know there are some funky combos where you can banish a monster and then go off, but surely we've moved on from then. Like, the meta's so much more advanced and so much more annoying that Gold Sark really just seems way too slow in today's format. In regards to the extra, go through it all again, but it's number 81, number 99, C92, C9, Sky Palace, Super Dimensional Robot Galaxy Destroyer, going into him's fun, but not if they then Solemn Judgment or Solemn Strike it. If you don't have a Dark Bribe, so never go into him unless you have a Dark Bribe set. That's the golden rule with Super Dimensional, but it is such a trolly way of destroying, finishing off your opponent. And the one you'll probably end up using the most is Gustav Max. If you need anything, you know where to find me, and if you've got any suggestions, would love to hear them. But I really can't talk highly enough about this deck. In just quickly covering the only real decks that I think this has problems with, it really struggles against DDD. Like, there's so much anti-meta in DDD that it overpowers this deck. Contracts and errors, they just have too many draws and too many ways to stun you and stop your back row from being effective. So unless you get set up really early against DDD, that deck will dominate this deck every day. And with Pei it can be 50-50. It depends how you open. But I've had good success against them. I've also looked like a complete tit against them as well. But the rest of the meta, whether it's Red Eyes, well, you could argue whether that's meta or not, but even Necros still, I'm not really sure they outpower this deck that much. This deck's got so many different ways of playing, which is its strength. But slowing the game state down is where it's really, really at its best. Stopping your opponent from going ham, stopping your opponent from just special summoning for days. And if they do, you've got the ability to send them back. And if they do, you've got the ability to protect yourself, so you're not going to be damaged by it because you've got that Metal Reflect, you've got that Custom, you've got that Lord, you've got that Chicken Game, you've got that Kaiser, etc., etc. So let me know what you think, and I'll be back soon. Bye.